80 years ago, in a different time, in a different world, a radio station far away, radiating its signal from the heart of Europe, was to take on the British establishment. From an ancient building at the end of the Rue Marconi, there was a radio revolution about to take to the air, putting the mystical Grand Duchy of Luxembourg firmly on the map of the relatively new world of the wireless.
Multitudinous greetings to your sons and daughters. My name is Noel Edmonds, which probably means nothing to you. It means everything to me, and I hope it means something to one or two other people.
Oh, dear. Well, I'd be very grateful if you'd stay with me for the Radio Luxembourg story, in which I make a rather brief appearance. In part one of 208, your Station of the Stars, we cover the beginnings in 1932, when test transmissions took place in preparation for broadcasting from the Grand Duchy, something that was a major irritation for the corporation that I'd eventually join. Fans of Luxy all have their favourite era and finest memories of a radio station that not only shook up Auntie Beeb, but brought happiness to millions. And many professionals in radio and TV today and yesterday owe much to Radio Luxembourg. I owe everything, because in 1968, thanks to the great 208, I took the first nervous steps on what was to become, happily, a long broadcasting journey.
And let's away this morning, today, with the sound of the Up movement, getting around a great sound from the House of Decker, Love and Touch.
Touch that I need so much. You got the love and touch that I need so much.
The music of the 60s owed little to that heard from Luxembourg in the 30s. In the years to follow, Radio Luxembourg's arrival as a name on a gleaming wireless display filled with foreign place names, the world in which it played a pioneering part changed forever. Europe changed too, with the station silenced for 5 years as war turned the continent upside down. What lasted from those early days was the sense of adventure spawned by Radio Luxembourg.
Tune in, for if you want to while away the night or day, I simply say tune in, tune in, tune in.
Radio Luxembourg had first appeared on a frequency allocated to Radio Warsaw, which hadn't yet gone on air. The Luxembourg government would be content to take a cut of advertising, while the new radio station was condemned by nations and broadcasters as a radio pirate. Its debut rattled the BBC, where Herculean efforts were made to prevent it from creating a bridgehead to capture an audience the BBC and the establishment wanted for their own. For a brief period, the BBC had enjoyed unfettered patronage and patronising of the airwaves. While the British Broadcasting Company had dabbled with commercialism in its first 5 years from 1922, its becoming a corporation in 1927 removed any vestige of paid-for advertising. Entrepreneurs on the other side of the channel had started commercial broadcasting from places such as Normandy and Toulouse, taking on the austere and haughty BBC by offering choice and sponsored radio programmes.
Vernon Fools are here again, the clock begins to cheer again. A win on Vernon Fools, and then happy days are here again.
With Radio Luxembourg on the air, the BBC continued to complain to as many authorities and commissions as it could, producing memos and correspondence on an industrial scale. The corporation made threats through the Postmaster General that appearances by performers on Luxembourg would not be good for career prospects. Luxembourg had moved legitimately to 1304 metres longwave, with its mixture of music from the dance halls and films and programmes recorded in front of an audience at home in Britain.
The new Stork Radio Parade, presented to you by the makers of Stork, the famous Sunshine Vitamin Margarine. This series is, as you know, in its second edition, and today's program is presented from the stage of the Granada Theatre, East Ham. On parade we have Win Richmond, Wilfred Thomas, the Carlisle Cousins, and your old friends Bobby Howell and his band. Our guest compares are those two argumentative comedians, Collinson and Dean. And here they are. Collinson and Dean.
Hello, customers. Turned out nice again, hasn't it? I'm Will Collinson, the long-suffering partner of Alfred Dean. You know, a lot of people think that I've got a very violent temper, but really, I'm quite a nice man. I am really. It's only when I meet that irritating idiot Alfred Dean...
Oh, did you call me?
Hello, he's here.
Yeah.
Bit late, aren't you?
Am I?
Am I? What time do you generally start work?
I don't know. They're always at it when I get there.
Yeah.
The BBC was producing programmes that were hardly the choice of ordinary people, especially on Sundays, where listening was dreich and dur, as the Director-General's rules about broadcasting on the Sabbath had been cast in stone. For John Reith, there was no such thing as fun on Sunday on the BBC. Over on Radio Luxembourg, however, there was sanctuary from talks, chamber music and church services.
My dog loves your dog, and your dog loves my dog. And if our doggies love each other, why can't we?
Good evening, masters and mistresses. Again, Sprats, famous makers of the Sprats big range of biscuit dog foods, have great pleasure in bringing to you a program of music by Fred Hartley and his Novelty Quintet and Brian Lawrence.
My dog loves your dog, and your dog loves my dog. And if our doggies love each other, why can't we?
Sean Street is Professor of Radio in the Media School at Bournemouth University. He studied the commercial radio stations of the pre-war years, the biggest of which was Luxembourg. It was a station that was leading change.
Radio Luxembourg brought about change because it brought about an alternative. It changed the way people thought in a time of depression, and one of the things that Radio Luxembourg enabled was sophisticated recording techniques. You had to be able to record well in order to ship material out to Luxembourg and play it back. And the other thing that was significant was that it did audience surveys. The BBC didn't do any audience surveys. They didn't start that until 1936. Public service broadcasting for the BBC meant we know what's good for you, therefore what's the point in us doing a survey, because we know this is what you should be listening to anyway. Commercial organisations like Luxembourg had to be able to prove to advertisers that this was a market that was worth advertising in, investing in. And so, therefore, they developed two areas, recording and audience surveys, way before the BBC.
You can't stop me from kissing you. You can't stop me from cuddling too. You can treat me mean, honey, that's alright, but I'll get even with you tonight, 'cause you can't stop me from dreaming. You can't stop me from holding hands. Make me listen to your commands. You can say no, no, honey, that's alright, but I'll get even with you tonight, 'cause you can't stop me from dreaming. From 1 o'clock till 9, I'll dream you're mine. I'll steal a kiss. See what you're gonna miss. You can't stop me romancing you. You're the boss now, but we're not through. You can turn me down, honey, that's alright, but I'll get even with you tonight, 'cause you can't stop me from dreaming.
Radio Luxembourg was staffed both in Britain and in the city of Luxembourg. Many programmes were recorded in London using modern equipment, mainly cumbersome disc or perhaps film in the days before tape recording. From its London office, programmes and the records to be spun by the announcers were posted to Luxembourg, arriving in the Grand Duchy by air and train to be collected by the same announcers at the main railway station and taken to the studios for transmission. For those first broadcasters sent to Luxembourg, life in Europe in the early 30s was exciting, with continental travel a rarity. While the Grand Duchy itself was rather conservative, the staff, including the late Charles Maxwell, made the most of their new home.
Life in Luxembourg was extremely pleasant. I look back on it now as probably some of the happiest months, or if not years, of my life. It was a friendly town, but there were very few British people. In fact, if a car came through bearing a GB plate, someone going on holiday perhaps, I would automatically go up and introduce myself and arrange to meet them for a meal or a drink in order to speak to someone from one's own country.
The Yankee says, gee whiz. The Scotsman says, hooray. The Welshman says, indeed, to goodness knows just why. In Lancashire and Yorkshire, ever since the world began, this is the expression of the strong and silent man. By gum. The only thing he ever says is by gum.
When I first arrived in Luxembourg was broadcasting for the whole of Sunday. By the whole of Sunday, I mean from 8 in the morning until midnight. You must remember that in these days, of course, the BBC had no light entertainment on a Sunday. It was a very solemn affair, the BBC Sunday in Sir John Reith's day, and Luxembourg were doing programmes with all the big stars, Gracie Fields, George Formby, people of that note.
The Quaker Quarter Hour, featuring Carol Levis and his radio discoveries.
Back on the air again in another Quaker Cornflakes program. And am I glad? Because there's no other job I like so well as giving a chance to some of the boys and girls with talent whom I keep discovering during my travels all over the British Isles. If you listeners get as much fun out of hearing these programs as I do out of presenting them, well, we're all happy. Well, my discoveries and I are now on the stage of the Odeon Theatre, Leicester Square, and the house is packed with over 2,000 members of the Quaker Radio Club who've come along to take this chance of seeing behind the scenes of radio. And there's a job I want you listeners to help me do, too. I want you to pick out the discovery in this program who has the greatest radio possibilities. Just write down the name of your favorite and address it to me, Carol Levis, Quaker Oats, Southall, Middlesex, to arrive not later than Tuesday. You can imagine what your votes mean, and they mean a real lot to all these boys and girls, particularly as the discovery who wins the most votes wins the generous cash prize presented each week by the makers of Quaker Corn Flakes. So let's have plenty of votes, and in next Sunday's program, we'll tell you the name of the winner you've picked.
While the BBC national programme on Sunday, the 25th of November 1934, was transmitting records by Verdi, a short religious service for young people, and the work of Christian missions, Radio Luxembourg aired the Zambuck concert, the Pompeian beauty preparations, and programmes of music and entertainment sponsored by Horlicks, Palmolive, Beecham's and Cadbury.
Well, it's just 2 minutes after 11:30, and yes, you guessed it first time. That means Sunday night request time at Luxembourg.
Let's meet at the organ, a program in which Sidney Torch and his friends entertain you at the organ. Cadbury's of Bourneville send you this musical variety to announce their new Rosie's Chocolates assortment.
Yes, organ entertainment was very different in those days. Now, you'd find Luxembourg's schedule published in weekly magazines, such as Radio Pictorial, owned by the company that supplied the station with programmes, including articles written by Radio Luxembourg announcers. But take a look in any newspaper for what was on the wireless that Sunday in 1934, and you'd find programmes on the BBC's national and regional services, and faraway continental stations such as Berlin, Budapest, Cologne, Hilversum, Leipzig, Milan, Oslo and Stockholm, but no Luxembourg. Sales of wireless sets and the purchase of the required 10-shilling BBC licence fee were matching the increasing wealth of a population recovering from the Depression as more jobs were created. A top-of-the-range Murphy wireless set could be bought for 15 and 10, or some £900 at today's prices. And at the same time, Radio Luxembourg's advertising income was increasing substantially year by year. Radio Luxembourg was positively encouraging audience participation with request shows and by starting clubs for listeners.
beautiful girls and boys. Meet your request, we'll not refuse you. We are here just to amuse you. Would you like a song or story? Will you share our joys? At King of Sports, we're more than keen. A million children could be seen. Because we all drink Ovaltine, we're happy girls and boys.
The show that stuck like an earworm in the minds of many listeners well beyond its disappearance became an essential part of Luxembourg's schedule. It also caught the attention of the Luxembourg authorities, as the late Stephen Williams, whose title was The Chief English Announcer, recalled in a documentary broadcast by Radio Luxembourg in 1974.
One of the chiefs of the Luxembourg secret police came to my office and demanded to know what I was doing by vitiating the terms of the license under which we broadcast, which prohibited the use of code messages. And I said, but we haven't broadcast any code messages. He said, you have 17:30 on Sunday evening. And then, of course, the penny dropped and I realised it was that damn Ovaltine message. When I translated it to him, all it said was, Ovaltine at bedtime helps you sleep. And he was quite disappointed. He went away convinced that when he'd come, he was convinced that he was on the track of a spy ring or something.
Now for my message in our own secret code. First word, 46, 10, 2, and the last word, 4, 2, 14, 10. Goodbye, my little Ovaltine friends. Goodbye.
By the summer of 1939, it was clear that war was inevitable. Preparations were made at Radio Luxembourg in anticipation, and as the English service was closing down, the BBC was restored as the only voice of the nation. The Radio Luxembourg that listeners in Europe had known was to fall silent for 5 years as the world plunged into the abyss.
It's a lovely day tomorrow. Tomorrow is a lovely day. Come and feast your tear-dimmed eyes on tomorrow's clear blue skies. If today your heart is weary, if every little thing looks gray, just forget your troubles and learn to say, tomorrow is a lovely day.
In the spring of 1940, Hitler's forces struck out. Luxembourg was occupied, with its radio stations and transmitters taken over by the Nazis, who used them to relay propaganda. However, Radio Luxembourg's local staff had deprived Hitler of an important weapon with which he could surround his message to occupied Europe. They'd hidden programme material that was clearly Radio Luxembourg's. Technical equipment to guarantee continuity of transmission, such as valves, was secreted away from the huge Junglinster transmitter site to be restored once the country was liberated.
This is the BBC Home Service. Here is the news read by Stuart Hibbard. Correspondents with the American First Army report this evening that Allied troops have entered the city of Luxembourg, capital of the Grand Duchy. For the second time in 30 years, the people of Luxembourg have been liberated from the invading Germans. We now salute the smallest of our allies.
After the liberation of the Grand Duchy in September 1944, the Americans, with the permission of the Luxembourg government in exile, broadcast propaganda to Germany on a station dubbed Radio 1212. Its role was to confuse and cause alarm among the German population. It remained on the air, using Radio Luxembourg's facilities, until early 1945, when its job had been done. There's speculation that Winston Churchill wanted to utilise Radio Luxembourg to broadcast to the Soviet Union, but as he lost the election in 1945, the radio station would return, much as in its pre-war form. As the Luxembourg Waltz was heard again, and in the years to follow, Radio Luxembourg would play a part in the lives of those behind the Iron Curtain. For millions, the fact that Luxembourg was back on the air was reassurance enough. The BBC had changed considerably during the war. There'd be no going back to the way it was. Much thought had been given about the shape of post-war public service broadcasting. Here's Sean Street.
It could be said that the war saved the BBC from itself. Public service broadcasting, a war, it's made for it. You know, absolutely what the BBC was born to do. And so much of its reputation comes from that era, its current reputation, even now, probably, in the form of the World Service and so forth. But what it also did was to provide, at a stroke, the dissolution of commercial broadcasting competition, at least for the time being. And there had even been questions in the House of Commons before the war from politicians who were saying, actually, broadcasting by advertising, isn't that quite a good idea? You know, maybe we should think about that. So the war came at a fairly appropriate time, optimum time for the BBC.
Oh, you hop a little on your little left shoe, you hop a little on your right one too. You kick a button like the Scotch kids do, that's the hop, Scotch polka.
Oh, you hop a little on your little left shoe, you hop a little on your right one too. You don't mind bouncing like a kangaroo to the hop, Scotch polka.
It's in and out among the maple trees, it's up and down and then you wave your knees.
Your head goes bobbing in the morning breeze to the hop, Scotch polka.
Oh, you hop a little on your little left shoe, you hop a little on your right one too.
You kick a button like the Scotch kids do, that's the hop, Scotch polka.
Let your lassie come along, as up we go to the hopscotch song.
Sing a line, sing a lee, that's the hopscotch melody.
Let your lassie come along, as up you go to the hopscotch song.
Sing a line, sing a lee, that's the hopscotch melody.
Oh, you hop a little on your little left shoe, you hop a little on your right one too.
You kick a button like the Scotch kids do, that's the hopscotch polka. Hop, hop, hoppity, hip, hip, hippity, hap, hap, happily on your way. Hop, hop, hoppity, hip, hip, hippity, hop to the hopscotch polka.
The world of radio had been changed, and not just in Britain. There'd be no competition from the pre-war commercial stations based in France, as the French government was only prepared to tolerate state broadcasting. So Radio Luxembourg was the only commercial station to emerge relatively untouched. Sean Street again.
After the war, yes, of course, there's this reshaping of broadcasting, so we can't go back to the way we were. And I think that Luxembourg was a key factor in the understanding that we'd actually missed out on a whole area of that audience, the populist audience, the populist material, particularly on Sundays. We can't go back to that. Reith had then gone anyway. So the war gives us a good reason to reshape. So the Light programme grows out of partly the Forces programme, but in the longer term, out of some of the lessons that were learnt during the 1930s in that period of competition.
In 1948, Luxembourg's small team of announcers included the singer Teddy Johnson. In a 1974 Radio Luxembourg documentary, Teddy told Bob Stewart about how easy it was to get a job on the station.
I got the job purely by chance. I'd never had any plans, thinking to myself, well, I'm going to be a radio announcer one day. I'd been a drummer and singer. A very dear friend of mine, Derek Bolton, he said, look, I've just come from Radio Luxembourg. He said, they're after an announcer for the English programmes over there. And he said, I mentioned you. And he said, you'll probably be hearing from them. And he said, as a matter of fact, he said, look, here's the address. Go down there now and see if you can see Mr. Frank Lee. So to cut a long story short, I went down and saw Frank Lee. And sure enough, on the Sunday, there I am, sitting in Luxembourg.
In 1948, 13 years before a recognisable chart show was to be broadcast by the BBC in Alan Freeman's Pick of the Pops, Radio Luxembourg created the Top 20 show, an idea of Teddy Johnson's boss, Geoffrey Everett, who proposed that the most popular records of the day were to be played in one single programme on Sunday nights. However, Teddy was not enthusiastic.
I said, that's ridiculous. I said, these records that we've got to play them, they're the popular records which not only are people hearing regularly over the air, but they are also buying them.
Yes.
So don't tell me that they're going to listen to a program which also has all these records. I said, people will never listen to it.
Yeah.
It'll be a flop.
And really, you're going to be all wrong.
Exactly, absolutely wrong. But we started the program, I think I've got the date right, about autumn 1948, and we had it Sunday nights from 11 until 12, and I started the program, and I thought...
So Radio Luxembourg brought about the first top 20 on British radio.
Oh, yes.
Beloved, be faithful. Beloved, be faithful. Beloved, be true. While I am away, dear, I'll trust in you. I'll never forsake you, though we are apart. Beloved, be faithful to my faithful heart. There'll be other lips, there'll be other arms that will want you for their own. Tell those other lips, tell those other arms that you're mine and mine alone. Beloved, be faithful. Beloved, be true. Keep watching and waiting until I'm back with you. Beloved, be faithful, though we're apart. When I'm away, I'll trust in you. I'll never forsake you, though we're apart. Faithful to my faithful heart. There'll be other lips, there'll be other arms that will want you for their own. You tell those other lips, tell those other arms that you're mine and mine alone. Beloved, be faithful. Beloved, be true. Keep watching and waiting till I'm back with you. Beloved, be faithful till I'm back with you.
Teddy Johnson returned to Britain in 1950 to take up his record-making career. His chart topper, Beloved Be Faithful, would have been played by Pete Murray, his replacement in Luxembourg. Pete's engagement echoed his predecessor's ease in landing the job.
I got it because nobody else wanted it, because the money was terrible, £15 a week, but that didn't interest me. I could live in a hotel and eat 3 meals a day and still have money to spare on 15 quid a week. Well, that's what life was like in the 50s. And I stayed for 5 years. When I first went there, the British broadcasting was only on, the English broadcasting was only on from 10:30 at night until 1 o'clock in the morning. That involved me doing, just to go in at, say, 10 o'clock and prepare a program, put the records together, and do a show and say till about 11:30, which was followed by generally an evangelical broadcast from America. And that was the British contribution until Sundays, when I had to spend practically all day in the studio just doing continuity with recorded programs coming from London, you know, Gracie Peels and Donald Pierce, that type of thing.
There's a strawberry moon in a blueberry sky
in a garden high over Manhattan. Oh, what a heavenly pattern. Even your ma and your pa never saw such a strawberry moon in a blueberry sky, blooming over to starry-eyed people, gazing at stars round the steeple of the church where I'll marry you soon, under a strawberry moon. Oh, the moon, lovely moon, what a heavenly strawberry moon. There's a strawberry cottage in Blueberry Lane, on the outskirts of merry Manhattan, furnished with silk and with satin, curtains of lace and 3 windows that face that old strawberry moon in a blueberry sky, and a strawberry patch in the garden. So glad that we put a yard in, we're expecting some blueberries soon, under a strawberry moon. Oh, the moon, lovely moon, what a heavenly strawberry moon. Oh, the moon, lovely moon, what a heavenly strawberry moon.
All I did on a Sunday, well, I had to stay there all the time. It was awful. I didn't have a break at all. Until 11 o'clock at night, and then I did the Top 20 show. And then when we changed to 208, so the medium wave, of course the reception wasn't as good on 208 as it had been on the long wave. It was very good in Ireland, very good in Scotland, but not so good in the south of England, not too bad in the north of England, pretty bad in the south of England and London and places like that. But people still listened because there was nothing else. I was on every night, at least for an hour and a half, and all my programs had sponsored slots. And if there was a sponsored slot, I got the minimum fee of £3. But as there were so many, and as I was working virtually 6 days a week, it got to the extent whereby the company called me in, this is why I left in the end, and said, look, you're earning more money than the president of the company. I said, well, I'm earning it legitimately. And I said, well, I'm afraid, we've got to cut you down to £20 a week on top of your salary. I said, no, well, I'm not prepared to stay any longer, and that's why I left.
In the early 50s, Radio Luxembourg was to become the new home for a number of programmes and artists dropped by the BBC. Dame Vera Lynn was one name to make the move.
Ladies and gentlemen, Vera Lynn sings.
Hello, everyone. Well, I've got another programme of songs for you, songs old and new. The first is an old friend, and its title gives us all good advice. Keep your sunny side up. Keep your sunny side up, up. Hide the side that gets blue. If you've 11 suns in a row, football teams make money, you know. So keep your funny side up, up. Let your laughter come through. Do stand upon your legs, be like 2 fried eggs. Keep your sunny side up.
By 1955, the BBC monopoly of broadcasting had been broken as commercial television opened. Radio Luxembourg was already broadcasting shows that were to become favourites as ITV grew into the next decade, with Double Your Money and Take Your Pick heard first on 208 before they were seen. Another ITV favourite started its life on Radio Luxembourg.
It's Huey Green! Opportunity knocks! Yes, for the next half hour, the makers of Beecham's Pills and Pensic Tablets invite you to listen to the All Winners program of Opportunity Knocks, with Jack Dove and his quintet and the talents and voices you, the listeners, have discovered. And here now to introduce the All Winners is your Master of Opportunities, Huey Green!
Friends, and a very good evening to you all. Well, here we are with the grand finales, and once again, good and loud opportunity knocks. They say opportunity only knocks once. I don't believe it. I once bumped into Sabrina twice. But now, ladies and gentlemen, this is a pretty exciting occasion for everyone, because during this season there have been 4 semifinals when you, the listeners at home, have voted the winners to come forward to tonight's show. Now, your vote will help one of them towards the £150 star prize and may win you a £5 premium bond, about which I'll be telling you more just a little bit later on. So let's meet that Opportunity Knocks winner now.
Also on Radio Luxembourg in the 50s was the radio version of what was to become Candid Camera, Candid Mic. Eventually, other programmes were inspired by the concept of setting up an embarrassing situation for a listener or viewer, culminating in being told, "You're on Candid Camera," or "Gotcha."
When you are cruising along in your car, it's so nice to have the best in entertainment. So switch your radio to 208 and make motoring a tuneful operation with all your friends at the friendly radio station.
When Pete Murray joined Radio Luxembourg in 1950, he'd been used to working with scripts as an actor. Luxembourg's station manager was quick to offer his new announcer some advice.
When I first went there, and Geoffrey Everett was actually there, and he picked me up at the station and we went in to do his programme, the one programme he did a week. And he sat there just talking into the microphone. I said to him, I can't do that sort of thing. I'll have to write a script. He said, you write a script, you'll never be a broadcaster. And he said, you've got to be able to read a script. If you write a script, a dialogue script, that's not what you should be doing. I said, well, I'll make a lot. It doesn't matter. You'll make mistakes. Even when you've been broadcasting for 40 or 50 years, you'll still make mistakes, but be human. So I took his advice, the best advice I ever had.
Radio Luxembourg was being favoured by record companies above a BBC governed by strict agreements with the Musicians' Union about the number of records that could be played. With Luxembourg under no such needle time restrictions, the stars and their new releases were being sent to the Grand Duchy.
When I was there, we used to get all the stars coming over to Luxembourg to plug their records, and the music publishers. In fact, I don't think I paid for a meal the whole time I was there, because I was being invited out all the time, wined and dined. And this guy came over with these records, a big cigar. He said, I got the new thing here. This is going to be the greatest thing in the whole wide world. Forget anything else. It's going to be rock and roll. And he was Bill Haley's manager. And I said, well, I've got a 15-minute slot. I'll do 15 minutes. And it really took off, you know.
Pete Murray, Britain's first rock and roll DJ.
1, 2, 3 o'clock, 4 o'clock, rock. 5, 6, 7 o'clock, 8 o'clock, rock. 9, 10, 11 o'clock, 12 o'clock, rock. We're gonna rock around the clock tonight. Put your glad rags on, join me home. We'll have some fun when the clock strikes 1. We're gonna rock around the clock tonight. We're gonna rock, rock, rock till broad daylight. We're gonna rock around the clock tonight. When the clock strikes 2, 3, and 4.
Over on the BBC, there were precious few programmes that would play the new music coming out of the United States. Keith Richards, soon to become a member of the Rolling Stones, who'd record programmes in London for 208, recalled that he first heard the music of Elvis Presley on Radio Luxembourg. Theatre impresario, film producer, and at one time Coronation Street star Bill Kenwright speaks for late 50s teenagers who longed for rock and roll and for whom Luxembourg was heaven.
It would be absolutely impossible to overstate the importance of Radio Luxembourg in my life, in my youth, and probably in any teenager of the 50s youth. It was nearly always heard underneath the sheets. And we used to search for 208 Radio Luxembourg, and believe me, you get 211, you get 204, but my golly, did you have to work hard to find 208. But when you found it, crackles and all, it was magic. There was Teen and 20 Disc Club, there was Jack Jackson, oh, it's Saturday.
And hello there, record fans, wherever you are. Once again, it's time for another roundup of all your favourite British and American recording artists, brought to you by the Decca Record Company for your special delight tonight. Oh, excuse me, madam.
Yes?
I work for Luxembourg, you see.
Oh, I am sorry. I'm afraid I can't help you.
No.
Luxembourg, of course, was the only time when we could hear those American hits, one after the other. Why? Because in England, as you know, there was something called needle time, and the BBC could only play one record out of every 4 songs because of, presumably, of the musicians' union and live music restrictions. Well, we used to listen to our record, then nip out to have a game of football in the backyard or make a cup of tea or whatever, play with the dog, and then come back in what we thought would be 10 minutes later after 3 appalling versions by a big band of our hits and grab whatever we could on the light programme. We didn't have to do that on Radio Luxembourg. On Radio Luxembourg, we could listen to American at its best.
Swing, you should have heard this knocked out jailbird sing, let it rock. Everybody let it rock. Everybody in old cell block was dancing to the jailhouse rock. Spider Murphy played his tenor saxophone. Little Joe was blowing on the slide trombone. The drummer boy from Illinois would crash, boom, bang. The whole rhythm section was a purple gang, let it rock. Everybody let it rock. Come on and do the jailhouse rock with me, let it rock. Everybody let it rock. Everybody
really exciting thing about Luxembourg was hearing the songs that you thought no one else could ever hear, unless they were listening to that radio with you at the time. Sort of American rhythm and blues songs that never became hits in this country. And you know what? Without a doubt, without any shadow of doubt whatsoever, Radio Luxembourg played a massive part in the Liverpool rock and roll scene. Where else could we have heard those songs that we picked up and made Liverpool anthems other than Radio Luxembourg? We would go down to the docks as the merchant boats came in, and we would get the 45s from merchant seamen and recognise the songs that we'd heard on Radio Luxembourg the week before, the month before, and be so proud that we had them. Because you got to remember, in those days, you couldn't just walk into a record store and buy a record. You'd have to order it, and you'd have to wait 2 or 3 weeks. And record stores in Liverpool in particular, I don't know whether anyone else, they used to advertise as played on Radio Luxembourg, and they would also say, and we can get it within 3 weeks, or Youngblood, BW Searchin', by the Coasters, as played on Radio Luxembourg, available in this shop now. That was a big deal, and it made you rush to your record shop, because you know you wouldn't get it in any other record shop. I'm pretty convinced that the things that helped us find that extraordinary musical time in Liverpool were the merchant seamen, who brought in the records from America, rhythm and blues, our own desire to find something, and the American records we heard on Radio Luxembourg, and only Radio Luxembourg.
I saw her standing on the corner, a yellow ribbon in her hair. I couldn't keep myself from shouting, look there.
Look at there.
Look at there. Look at there. Young blood. Young blood. Tell me what it is. Young blood. I can't get you out of my mind. I took one look and I was fractured. I tried to walk but I was lame. Stuttered. Why, what's your name?
What's your name?
What's your name? What's your name? Young blood. Young blood. Young blood. I can't get you out of my mind. What crazy stuff. She looks so tough. I had to follow her all the way home. Then things went bad. I met her dad. He said, you better leave my daughter alone. Well, I couldn't sleep a wink for trying. I saw the rising of the sun, and all night long my heart was crying. Why, you were the one.
You're the one.
You're the one. You're the one. Young blood. Oh, young blood. Young blood. I can't get you out of my mind. Young blood. Oh, young blood. Young blood. I can't get you out of my mind.
Radio Luxembourg went through 2 distinct phases in its early years. When it was restored after the war, it was much the same as it had been in 1939. Central to change was the arrival of rock and roll in 1955 and the growing dominance of the record labels on 208 schedules. Like Bill Kenwright, Sean Street was a youngster growing up with Radio Luxembourg, where its first chapter of programming was coming to an end.
The second phase, where rock and roll does kick in, you have the whole idea of sponsored record programs. So the Decca Group were broadcasting sponsored record programs. Pete Murray, Jack Jackson, so forth, all wonderful broadcasters and people you would listen to almost as much for their presentation as the records themselves, although it was the place you got records. You listened to Pete Murray and Jack Jackson for Decca Group Records, which meant Decca, but it also meant London American Records. It meant Coral, so you got Buddy Holly, Brunswick, all these labels that we became quite expert at understanding in that era because they were part of your conversation at school the next day. We became real experts in our music. It was an education in rock and roll.
By the early 60s, 208 was home to almost anyone who was anything in British pop broadcasting. It was truly the station of the stars. Live programmes late into the night continued to be presented by the team of announcers in the Grand Duchy, while singers and groups were recording shows to be heard earlier in the evening at studios at 38 Hertford Street, Mayfair, London, an address that's synonymous with 208. Alan Bailey was an engineer and producer at Radio Luxembourg's London offices, visited on many occasions by star names.
38 Hertford Street is a building just behind the Hilton Hotel in London, and in the basement we had what we called the checking rooms, where when we did tapes, programmes, they had to be checked by 3 checkers afterwards to make sure that we weren't violating any rules of broadcasting. And then on the ground floor we had the reception, of course, and then 2 studios, Studio A and Studio B. Studio A was the big studio, the music studio, where we did people like the Stones, Marty Wilde, all different groups.
Never know how much I love you, never know how much I care. When you put your arms around me, I get a feeling that's so hard to bear. You give me fever. When you kiss me, fever. When you hold me tight, fever, baby. In the morning, fever all through the night.
When we had people come over like David Cassidy from the States, we had a little balcony out the front overlooking Hertford Street, and he used to come out on there, and the crowds in the streets, we want David, we want David. Frank Sinatra has walked through those doors, Connie Francis, the Everly Brothers, Andy Williams, all these big names.
Oh, one sec, there's a postcard here for Funny Feeling. It reads, I think Funny Feeling is the best written number you've ever sung. Signed, Bruce and Hank.
I got a funny feeling that I'm falling in love with you. Yes, I got a funny feeling that I'm falling in love with you. Every day and night I dream up dreams of you. 'Cause I got a funny feeling that I'm falling in love with you.
Until 1964, Radio Luxembourg's dominance of pop music radio had gone unchallenged, while on the BBC there was always the problem of needle time. Radio Luxembourg's revenues were soaring. Friday night ads on 208 were driving teenage sales on Saturdays. But
You're tuned to Radio Caroline on 199, your all-day music station.
in part 2 of 208, your station of the stars, the Radio Luxembourg story continues with the impact of pirate radio and the changes of 1967, the end of shows sponsored by record companies, and the move to unfettered pop music with the Big Six team of DJs in the early 70s. A night to remember in August 1977, the station of the 80s, and in the early 90s, the end. Our thanks to Alan Bailey for his archive material, also to the two Phils, Hughes and the Collector.